Okay, so this is one of the few sheets that's got information, position, speed, gear, accelerate written onto the face. So that while you're talking to the associate, I always do it so that it's facing them so that they can read everything rather than me reading it. So you end up having to learn to write backwards and upside down and things, which is always good fun. We've also written on there the fact it covers observation, anticipation, hazard management, reaction to signs, position in bends, position in general, horn and flash. I guess those position in general and position in bends has changed now because we've now got a further breakdown on the grading matrix to try and make life easier for ourselves. But I don't think it's essential to change them on here. So you can talk about all those points. So when you start to work through the grading matrix, and you think, oh, can I talk about this? Well, you can talk about any of those points while you're scoring the grading matrix. In fact, just grab a sheet and grab one. Yeah. Cheers, mate. So when you're running through your grading matrix and you get into your planning section, you've got your concentration, observation, anticipation, hazard management. You've got all that. And then in the lower section you've got your bend work and junctions. You can discuss all that on the one drawing, which makes life really easy. Mm-hmm. So you find that you can bring a lot of their ride into the one drawing really and talk about it. A lot of it's in general terms. We've drawn one for overtaking in bends for views and positions and what you can see. We've tried to do one with parked cars either side of the road. And then that's actually the bend on Cornton curves where the farm is going out towards Cornton, Hoxton's, that direction. Where they've got shell grip now, that section there always gets muddy and waterlogged in winter. You'd be amazed how many people ride through the crap rather than keeping out of it and adjusting the position. So we've got that. The other side of that is we've got a bit of a dual carriageway coming to some traffic lights and a junction to the left. And that you can talk about observation, anticipation and lane discipline. But at the bottom we've only then got IXPGA rather than the whole word, so that you're trying to get them to think about what it's about. So rather than giving them the whole word, we've only given them the initials, but we've given them a start. Back of that again, you've got a long road with vehicles and positioning and junctions and stuff. So we've tried to give you a big selection of dry wipes. Talk about the idea that that's a planned view of a humpback bridge. We generally talk about it for crest, but if you just draw it as a crest, it's difficult for them to understand. So for humpback bridge, it gives you a chance to talk about it better. And then we've got two roundabouts. We've got Hoxton roundabout. We've also got Bingham roundabout, roughly. And then again, junctions and positions on the road and things. And then bends and position and what you can see through corners. So there's lots of things we can talk about using the dry wipes. So more or less, whatever scenario you come up with, you've got a dry wipe to cover it, or to try and help you cover it. So what I normally do, he says, trying to find something, I'd normally stick that on. I'd extend the line out onto another sheet. And then we're talking about gathering information and position. So you're talking to them, you're riding down the road, based on the fact you've got no oncoming hazards and no offside dangers. You should be gathering information, so as you're looking up ahead you see the warning triangle. Even if you can't read it and all it is a little black triangle, you know that there's a junction ahead because it's a warning triangle. You can see the warning triangle, so it's a hazard warning sign. Your lines are probably going to go from short lines and long gaps as they get nearer to it to end up being long lines and short gaps. So again, it's telling you that there's hazards coming up. So you're trying to get them to look for that. As you can get nearer and nearer to the junction, you can read now that it is, that junction. You can read that there's a T-junction to the left. As you're approaching, you're now getting closer. So if you're out here and you're doing 60, you might roll off down to 50. So if you're in 6th, you might roll off and you might still leave it in 6th. As speed's coming along, you're looking at junction, you're looking over the hedge to see any oncoming hazards coming towards you. I would probably move out further towards the white line to give myself a greater distance from the danger to the left. Because if there's a high hedge or you're in Derbyshire with Derbyshire stone walls, view's restricted out of junctions. So what cars normally end up doing is having to stick themselves over the front of the junction so that they can get a clear view. Well, if they do that, you're going to be, if you're running close to the hedge, you've got a good chance of coming into conflict, or you've got to make some evasive action. And if you start doing that, you really shouldn't be changing position without checking your mirrors and your shoulder check, which then means you're putting yourself into more danger because you don't know what's coming from behind. So it's easier on the approach to move your position out towards the centre of the road to get yourself further away from the hazard to the left. You're not only looking at the hazard of the warning triangle showing the junction to the left, you're also looking further ahead all the time because you're gathering information which is going to adjust your position. Now each one of those is a separate item, but the information covers everything. So as you're looking at your warning triangles ahead, which is the next junction, you know the road's going to the left. So you're already out to the middle of the road. So you know that your position's good to set yourself up for the left turn. So speed, you've come down to 50, you think, oh, bend's coming up, I need to slow down a little more. At which point, you're still on a closed throttle, you might be down to 40, so you might be down to 5th, you might be down to 30, you might be down to 4th. Speed's coming down, we're happy with 30 miles an hour? Possibly. You might decide that even though you're down to 30, you might now be down to 3rd. Because 3rd gear is probably the right gear for 30 miles an hour for a tight bend, because you're getting in, you're gathering information. Right, so as you're moving through the corner, your line of sight at that point is only to there. Now what I tend to do with these is I tend to rotate them around so that the associate, wherever he's sitting, he's looking at the direction that the road's pointing rather than him imagining it around corners. But for the purpose of filming it tonight, we'll try and keep it as it is. So at that point you can only see to there, but as you move slightly further into the corner you can now actually see further up the road. So before you've even turned into the left hand corner, properly committed yourself to a left turn, you can see there's only a short distance before the road's going to the right. But you can't see down this side because at the moment it's all obscured, so you just need to hold your position out slightly longer until you can now see clearly down the left hand grass verge. And you're knowing before you turn in the ideal world you want to be over towards the left hand side, so you're planning that left turn, that right turn from the left position. Once you see it's clear, you can then take a nice sweeping line straight in and set yourself up. Now the next set of warning triangles are going to be in the grass verge down the left hand side. Road signs read top to bottom, and it's going to go left and then go right. Try it again, right and then left, with a T-jump following it. So as you're riding towards this bend, you can read that sign from that bend. So you know that you can see the right hand bend ahead of you, but then you also know that you need to be out towards the white line for a left hand bend, and there's a junction after it and you might need to stop. So in the way that Colin McRae's co-driver used to shout out pace notes to him as to roads going left, roads going right, all these road signs are the pace notes to what's coming up ahead. They're the index on the road to what's happening ahead of you. So you need to be reading all your road signs, because even though you've not actually left that bend at about 30 miles an hour, you know it, you're now planning in your mind you want to be over to the left, over to the right, and you may have to stop. Okay, so as you can now see where the road's going to go, you'll probably stay in 3rd gear and accelerate through. You might get to 35 or maybe 40 miles an hour between the two bends, just winding on the throttle, roll it back off. As the speed comes down, you're looking all the time now through your corner. At that point you can only see to there. Speed's coming in, view's coming in, you get a little bit further, you can now actually see the next bend, so you know you don't need to change up, and 3rd gear feels fine. So as you're proceeding around the corner a little bit further, because you've got to hold your line out towards the left hand side until you can get that danger area clear. Once you can see into there, you can then take a nice sweeping line, set yourself back up on the white line. All the time you're looking ahead over hedges to try and see anything come in or any vehicles parked on the left around the corner. You may accelerate again to 35 maybe, and you'll roll back off maybe down to 30 miles an hour. And as you come around the corner, if it's all clear, you can then accelerate through, and then you get 4th, 5th, 6th, gone. If there are hazards there, you're at the right speed, right gear to apply the brakes and make a safe stop.
Brilliant.
Okay, so again, we're talking about a slight junction, working into, if you want to add on, if you wanted to extend the drawing, again there's no problems in adding bits on, because sometimes they've got a very long junction that what you're talking about is forward planning and observation, because they're not looking ahead. They're coming all the way in, and then they're suddenly get right into really close, particularly if they're sump line. And they tend to almost come to a stop. And then they realise that what they should have done was been in lane 2. So because they should have been in lane 2, they now want to start and change position. But because of the angle where they are, they're having to just look in mirrors and they're looking over the shoulders. And you've got cars coming through from behind rather quickly. And to get out, they end up doing a 90-degree turn out and then a 90-degree turn back again to get to there. But to blend in with traffic that's passing them is really difficult. So what I tend to do then is extend everything back and say, if you'd have actually looked ahead and seen the cars parked in lane 1 and none in lane 2, what you should have done was change positions from way back there, and you can talk them through where they should have gone. Another thing we can talk about with that is lane choice, which is back to lane discipline again. You've got 2 rows of traffic, you're going straight ahead. Lane 1 is obviously a straight ahead, and it's also a left turn. Lane 2 is obviously straight ahead. But because it's blank on that side, you can adapt it to whatever you want it to be. So you can have a road and a curb and another entrance with a centre bit in the middle if you wanted to. So you can adapt whatever you've got to suit the scenario they had. So we can talk to them about which lane would you choose. If you approached and lane 1's got 3 cars in it, lane 2's got none, which lane would you use? Often, after them having told, criticised or commented on for sitting in behind traffic, then they go, okay, I'll go into lane 1. Okay. So if you've got 2 rows of cars, which lane do you go in, lane 1 or lane 2? What are you good at? Well, you're supposed to be gathering information. So the point of gathering information is you look at the traffic lights. You could be talking about filtering. Would you filter to the front in that scenario? Is there enough room to get factors? Is there enough room to get to the front? Possibly. How long have the lights been on red? If they've been on red as you approached and they first came into view, chances are they could go green. If they're on green when you approached and they went red while you're on the approach, then chances are they're going to go red for a while and you've got room to get to the front. But it's all relevant to what you can see. So if you decide that you're not going to go to the front, which lane are you going to sit in? Lane 1 or lane 2? Well, again, from sitting at the back, you can't see what anybody's doing in front, but you can take a guess that maybe car 1 might be indicating to turn left. So if he is indicating to turn left, these 2 vehicles are going to have to slow down while he takes that tight turn, which means that lane 2 is going to run through quicker. So I would have chosen lane 2. The danger of starting to filter is that if you're starting to filter and these vehicles are now moving forwards, so they're going forwards, and number 1 has now gone to there, number 2 will then move forward and he could try and do that through the gap. And if you're coming through the middle, then you get taken out. So you probably don't want to do that. These scenarios all come up while you're out training with them. Other option then. Car in lane 2 at the front is indicating to go left. Which lane would you choose?
Right.
Driving.
Your left.
He's going right. Which lane would you choose? Lane 1 or lane 2? Well, again, the information depends on what's sitting over this side of the road. Because this vehicle's sitting there and he hasn't got a green filter lane, chances are he's going to move forward and sit there and wait for a gap, which then means that 1, 2 and 3 are going to queue in behind him, and that lane, even if he does turn left, he's going to run through quicker. So I'll probably choose lane 1. But the whole idea is all we're trying to do is to play out any scenario, whatever they throw in or whatever they do, you can adapt and change these to try and suit yourself, just to be able to talk about them. It can also, like with the weekend, the guy got himself to the front and he then sat there and started playing with his helmet and checking his mirrors and looking around at various things. And what I'm watching the traffic lights going, for traffic going that way on us. And as I saw these lights over here go amber, I knew that mine were going to go red within 6 seconds later, because if they go amber, they only go 1001, 1002, 1003, 1004, 1005, they go amber. So as they go red, you saw my helmet camera dip as I put it back into gear. He still sat there looking around. Eventually the lights went green That car pulled off, he then put it into gear and then did his mirror checks, position checks, shoulder checks and rode off, by which point we're level with car 2. Yeah? So you can talk about all sorts of things as to where they need to be gathering information. If you've got pedestrian lights to cross that side, we're not going to go green until they've gone red. So if once they go to red, you've got about 5 seconds before your lights go green and then you pull away. So you can talk about watching the lights, the light sequences and trying to anticipate, which is all back down to anticipation again, when your light's going to go green. So you put it back into gear and you're doing your provisional checks before you set off, and then when the lights go green you ride away. Because if you're going to come in and you're going to sit and filter, you can't afford to be waiting for it to go green before you do all your checks. You need to be watching and planning, and when they go green, into gear, and the second yours go green, you ride away. You might even talk about the fact that if they were on green as you're approaching, and you see a car come up and he stops there, he's going to activate the light sequence for yours to go red. So rather than flying down here at, it could be 70 mile an hour road, rather than you flying down here at 70, you should be anticipating, because there's a car appeared at the junction, he's going to activate the light sequence for yours to go red. So what you should be doing is slowing down and giving it down to 60, 50 miles an hour just in case they change. You might be down to 50 or 40 at that point. And if the lights stay green, great, go straight through. But you're anticipating those changing. So rather than flying up and then braking really, really hard, you're anticipating the stop. Right, this has been drawn of Corton curves, big farms in that direction. In winter time this is always really muddy. Okay, so golden rule is always compromise position for safety. 5-point sensitive is information, position, speed, gear and accelerate. We've got mud or deep water on the left hand side. You don't want to ride in mud or deep water. We've all seen the Dawn French thing where she's skipping through the lanes and disappears up to a neck in water. This standing water, you don't know how deep it is. It might be only ½ inch, it might be a foot. So what you should be doing is trying to compromise your position for safety. So as you're riding towards the road, you're moving out towards the left hand side, right hand side of your lane to get a view around the corner. On your approach, you're also then looking in that direction, over the hedge, through the hedge, depending on the time of year. Safest time of year to ride is in winter, because all the hedges are dead and bald and you can see through them. And what you're looking for is hazards coming towards you. So, assuming that you can't see anything coming towards you, rather than taking the usual line around the outside of the corner to get a view, what you need to do is compromise your position for safety and ride nearer to the white line. But because you've then compromised your position, your speed needs to be down and you need to be in a lower gear. You might find you're only down to 20 miles an hour and you might be in second gear. But if something then does appear rather quickly, you're in a position that you can get out of its way hopefully safely. If, as you're approaching, you see something big, it might be a van or a lorry coming at you, he's going to come out and swing quite right around this corner, then possibly the safest thing would be to do would be to come in and sit and possibly even stop, let him come through and then go through yourself. Scenario is yours. On the other hand, I suppose if you go in the opposite direction, if you were going then in that direction and you can see lots of water on this side of the road on your approach because you're out looking for your views, you've got to then anticipate vehicles that are coming towards you, maybe on your side of the road as they would be if it was a parked car. So on your approach, you may be out looking for a view, but your speed might be compromised lots. You may even sound the horn, just to let anybody know that you can see coming, that you're there.
Don't we need to be the good?
Okay, this was drawn to be Southwell, because we use Southwell a lot, and there are always parked cars on both sides of the road. Positioning. With no oncoming hazards and parked vehicles on both sides of the road, as I come in I'm going to take a position that's going to be central to my lane and I'm going to try to pass as near to centre as I can do. Reason being, if somebody then opens a car door or somebody runs out through a gap, I'm equal distance off any hazard from both sides. It also gives you, as you're scanning, you should be scanning the whole area, including the pavements and any other clues that you can look for. If on the other hand, as you're approaching, you get a car coming towards you, you've got to make a decision of are you going to stop or are they going to stop. It all depends on how close the junction is, how close to the gap you are. If you were in your car and you were slightly nearer than they were, you might think that you've got the right of way and you'd run through the gap. And because you're running through the gap, they'll stop and let you go through because you've filled the gap. Downside is, because you're on a bike, instead of holding that same position, what people tend to do is to move over to the left. Now if you do move over to the left, you're suggesting to the oncoming car that if I keep over to the left, there's enough room for you to come in and squeeze through that gap there. Dangers of that is if someone comes out through there or somebody opens a car door, he's going to swerve in your direction. Everybody flinches away from the hazard. And just because you're coming through, he won't stop. He'll still hit you. So what you need to try and do is dominate your bit of road. So information, parked vehicles either side, position, central. Speed, it might be 15 miles an hour, maybe. As you're going through the gap, oncoming hazard, if he decides he's not going to stop and he's coming through because he thinks you're only a bike, get out of the way. Information's changed, position, get yourself across to the left and possibly stop. Select first, he passes, and you carry on. Nope. You could find yourself that you've got parked vehicles on the left hand side, there may be a driveway to the left. As you're travelling then down your bit of lane, you may find that there's a vehicle slowly reversing out of the driveway. Again, you've got a choice of what do you do. It's position on the road, you can sound the horn, but you can talk about how you would then slow down and watch what's going off and talking about the development of what's happening in the junction. Bit waffle, but it happens. So, that's mine.
Yeah, no, I was just moving out.
Don't nick me tea!
Yeah, I'll angle the handle to you.
Okay, so overtaking, positioning, observation. Down the left hand side, information position with gear accelerate. So what we're trying to do then is we're talking about following positions and what you can see, what you can't see, what can you expect to happen. Now the classic scenario is they get very, very close and their line of sight then is very reduced. So what we're saying is if these vehicles are doing 40, as for instance, and you're travelling up the road and you're doing 60, you roll off and your speed will come down to 50 and your speed will come down to 40 and you're matching the speed of the vehicles ahead. Now because your speeds come down, your gear comes down. So you might have come from 6th, down to 5th, down to 4th, and you're trundling along at 40 miles an hour. Now from sitting back there, you can move to anywhereabouts on your side of the road and you can see up the inside of the vehicle, which might give warnings for other hazard signs up on the left hand side, which might explain why these vehicles in the countryside are doing 40 miles an hour. And you can move to the outside and you can have a look at the outside of the vehicles and see finger posts pointing into that junction as well. So you not only know that that warning triangle tells you the junction up on the left hand side, but the finger post on the left hand side is always pointing opposite the junction, so you know where the junction is. Because sometimes they're all tall grass and you can't actually see the lines or break in the hedge. So by moving to the offside, you can then look up and see where the next clue is into there. Because we're gathering information by adjusting your position. The speed is maintained the same because we're still doing 40, and you're down to third gear, fourth gear because that feels right for 40. Your other option is you can always, if that junction no longer exists, so that no longer exists, and that no longer exists, different scenario, we've caught up with the same bunch of cars and we don't know what's going on. You've done all this, you can move to the inside, there's no hazards up the inside, you can move to there's no hazards toward what you can see. You do your rear observation check with your shoulder and your mirrors, you can move sideways. And you can move sideways as far as you want. Because all we're doing is adjusting your position, because it's information, position, speed, gear, accelerate. All we're doing is moving our position to gather more information. We've not actually started to overtake, all we're doing is moving around on the road behind the vehicles ahead. Now if you are just looking up the white line, you generally can't see much. But by moving further and further away, you can. Right, so not only can you move out to the right hand side to try and look at any gaps, if it's a sunny day, hopefully it's coming from the right direction, you sometimes find you end up with small shadows on the road. So you can look at the size of the shadows to see where the gaps are. So if you're planning overtakes, because there's no oncoming hazards, you can see where the shadows are. If there are any entrances, you then tend to find that they've also got a shadow with a gap in the middle of it. So you can see where the entrances are. So when you're flowing through the countryside, if there's any entrances into fields, you can see where the break is in the hedge with a shadow. So you can look for that. Okay, so same bit of road, still moving out, still out to the outside, still doing 40, they're still doing 40. Because you've now moved out, you might find that the vehicle at the front is a caravan with a car on the back. I'll try to go around. Car with a caravan on the back. Because you've moved out for your view, you can now see why all these cars are doing 40. And you can make the decision as to whether you're going to make an overtake or not. If you start to then move up, rather than being close to all the vehicles up the white line, you're better off staying out wide because it gives you a better look ahead. And you can also pick your spot that you're going to go for. Now, if you're making a safe overtake, because you can see a long way ahead of you that it's no oncoming hazards, no offside hazards, so you're going to carry on with your overtake, you might find that you're only actually coming through at about 50. You don't need to come through at 60 at the national speed limit or wherever the speed limit is on the road. As long as you're making progress forward, you're still moving forward, but you need to be at a speed that you can stop and that you can see. Now then, you might find that there's a car sitting slightly out from the back of the caravan. The reason why he's sitting there is because he's trying to get a view down the outside of the caravan to see if he can get an overtake in, because they're still doing 40 miles an hour. Now you can see that by looking forwards. Now if you were in the car and you were sitting there, you'd be trying to look ahead. So you know he's trying to plan an overtake, but rather than coming to there and having a look, all he's doing is peeping his nose around the back of the caravan. Right, so you're still making your overtake and you're still coming up at 50 miles an hour or so. If he then decides that the road ahead is safe and he then comes out and goes for his overtake, don't come breaking in really hard. What you should be doing is looking at the road ahead, seeing him start to move out, and your planning information phase says he's planning an overtake. My position, I'm okay, I can stay here, I can still see the road ahead safe, I've got no other dangers. Speed, you might be down to 40 miles an hour and match the speed of the vehicles. As he then pulls out and goes because he doesn't shoulder check, once he's cleared the junction, you can then pick the speed back up. If the road scenario changes and there's a vehicle appears ahead of you, or the road changes, or the hazard on the left, you can always then aim and drop back into the gap that he's come from. Same drawing, filtering. All the cars are stuck, they're all doing 0 miles an hour. You're approaching from the back. Can't figure out why everything's slowing right down. Your speed's coming down, so you come down to 60, down to 50, down to 40, down to 30, down to 20 miles an hour. As you're doing this, you've moved out, you've had a look, you're coming out, you think, what are they doing? Don't know quite what they're doing. Right, okay, so I'll start and move forward. You can gently move forward for your overtakes rather than coming down as you're filtering down the outside. Start to work your way. If there's no offside danger, start to work your way down the outside. What you need to worry about is if they're queuing, these vehicles are all really close together. If they've left a gap, why have they left a gap? Is there a vehicle over the hedge? So as you're coming in, you're slowing down, you're looking over the roofs of what's happening. If you find there's a vehicle there, the safest thing to do is to then drop back in and sit with the other car by his side. When he moves forward, he can then come out and join the group. You could say, is anybody going to overtake? Well, U-turn. Before a car can U-turn, if they're stuck in traffic and they're all really close like they normally are, you're fairly safe that none of these vehicles are going to U-turn on you, because they generally need to take quite a wide turn. What cars generally tend to do, I know last night was different, but what they generally tend to do is move over to the left and wait for the cars in front to move forward. All the wheels get cranked over at full angle and then they go around and then back and out again. But whatever the wheels, as you're scanning down the outside of all these traffic moving along, filtering nice and steady, if all the wheels are pointing forwards, they can't U-turn on you, generally. Because they've got to be moving, the wheels have got to point in that direction before the car can turn. So as you're riding along, you should be scanning all the wheels, and if there is a gap, why is there a gap? If it turns out that the reason why there's a gap is because the bloke playing around with his radio or his phone, or the kids in the back are shouting, you slow it right down, you have a look, you wait and see what's happening, there's no oncoming hazards, it's just him fiddling around with something in the car, great, carry on again. But you've gathered your information, you've adjusted your position, your speed, and your gear, you might be down to second gear, might come right the way down to first gear, almost stop, think, no, it's safe, and ride on through again. If there are entrances on the other side of the road, then they've left gaps, and again, that's more warnings that he could be waiting to turn in and come back out again. Okay, roundabouts. Soxton roundabout as it happens, well that's what we're drawn for.
So look, I'm sat in Lardham, am I?
No, you're
No.
sat up at
Oh no, I'm
Northgate.
you're sat in Lardham.
I'm sitting there.
Southall's this way.
Southall's that way, look.
Yes,
so
to Oxton.
Nottingham's that way, look.
Yeah.
Yeah?
I couldn't see that because
So-
you ran over it.
Got a dual carriageway, 70 mile an hour limit, and you're in your car. So if you're in your car, you're approaching down here, you're coming down to 60, you're coming down to 50, you may be down to 40,
Grandma's down to 20.
you come